since that's happened, and actually I moved to Idaho about that time when they were reintroducing the wolves, and it was just really an exciting time, I know.
Mhm.
But since then, we've had, the population of wolves has increased in the area. And I live in Idaho, Idaho Falls, which is not very far from the park. But it seems like there's been some changes in the laws in the state of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming with the legalizing of the killing of
Mhm.
wolves.
Yes.
So I was just curious what your thoughts are on that and how's it impacted the wolf population in Yellowstone.
Mhm. Sure. Because I'm based in Yellowstone, I'm most familiar with what's been going on in the state of Montana. I'm less familiar with Wyoming and Idaho, so let me concentrate on Montana. Um, the wolf den that I study, that I was watching this morning and watch tomorrow, is located only about 5 miles from the northern border of Yellowstone. Um, and that would be the border that's in Montana. And when they legalized wolf hunting in Montana years ago, they had a relatively low quota of wolves that could be legally killed. Um, if people could visualize Yellowstone, which is roughly square in shape, so the northern part of the square would be on the border with the state of Montana. Along that northern Montana, if we went back a few years ago, the two hunting districts in that area had a limit, a quota of just 3 wolves each. So in total, if any wolf crossed the northern border of Yellowstone and stepped across it, only 6 could be legally shot. Well, 2 years ago, the state of Montana changed that. And instead of a limit of 3 each, they said it would be unlimited,
Huh.
unlimited. There was a lot of protest against that, but those were the regulations. And if we add during that hunting season, about a year and a half ago now, to um, other sections of the park border in Idaho and Wyoming, a total of 24 of the roughly 100 Yellowstone wolves were shot and killed, 24 out of 100. So
Wow.
24% of them. And the main pack that I studied, which we've already talked about, the Junction Butte pack, they were hit the hardest. 4 of their pups and 4 of the young adult wolves were killed during that hunting season. So it was a terrible tragedy. Um, but things got better this past year. Last summer, the Montana Fish and Game Commission had a hearing. Many of the wolf supporters testified at it, and we succeeded in having them make a major change. So they went from having no limits along the northern border of Yellowstone to having a limit of just 6 that could be taken. We'd rather have it to be 0, but reducing it to 6 was a big victory as far as we were concerned. We think maybe 1 or 2 of the junction wolves were taken, but that's way better than 8. So we felt we had a pretty good victory there.
And that's going to sustain, that law is going to sustain. They're not going to go in and try and change that, or is there any way they can to increase the numbers again?
Well, yes, next summer, well, actually later this year, this coming summer, they'll have more hearings. So we'll organize again and try to get it to be reduced. Um, but we're pretty happy with what we have right now. One of the issues, and I think maybe this would be worth it to talk about, is that the wolves in Yellowstone, they get used to seeing people at a distance. We get 5 million visitors a year. I think we talked earlier about how we try to stay at least a mile away from the wolves when we're watching them, but they're aware that we're there. They see the cars, they can hear us from that distance, they see us moving around. And occasionally, wolves will encounter hikers or backpackers as they're traveling throughout the park. Now, inside the park, they're not going to encounter anyone with a gun that's trying to kill them. But let's just say a wolf that has grown up near a hiking trail and occasionally does encounter people. if it during the hunting season unknowingly leaves the park and it sees a person walking toward him or her or the family, they're probably going to assume that that's not really much of a problem because it never had been before. And let's just say if it's inside the park, a wolf gets used to a human being making a motion like this, where they're bringing a camera or binoculars, a spotting scope or something up to their eye. You probably have already realized that if it's outside the park, that's probably going to be a rifle pointing at them.
Hmm.
So wolves have maybe a naive attitude toward the dangers from human beings. And the wolf might just stand there as the person is pointing a rifle at them and pulls the trigger. We do everything we can inside the park to keep a good distance between park visitors and the wolves, but we get 5 million people a year here. So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with. And then when we testify, when they have hearings, those are the issues that we bring up. And we particularly emphasize the fact that having wolves is so beneficial to our local economy and job creation, $82 million. I'll give you kind of a contrast. A few years ago, when they had a no limits, if you paid all the fees that you needed to for licenses to kill, you could kill as many as 10 wolves.
Wow.
It only cost you $140 to do that legally. So in other words, the state of Montana was telling its residents that they value the life of a wolf as the equivalent of being worth $14. That's what it costs to kill a wolf in Montana. But we can establish that having wolves back in Yellowstone is contributing $82 million to the local economy. And since we have an average of about 100 wolves in the park, I think if you divide $82 million by 100 wolves, I think that works out to about, let's see, $820,000
Wow.
would be the value of a wolf to
That's
tourism compared to $14.
hmm.
So let's just say if you were raising a family around one of the towns on the border of Yellowstone, let's say the town of Gardner, where I am in Silvergate, and you start raising kids and you're worried about your kids moving away because there are no jobs. Now, if they want to be a wolf biologist or be a wildlife tour guide, both of those are well-paying jobs, and they can stay in their home communities and have a great career and have great jobs here.
Wow, that's crazy to think about that comparison. Do you think that the state of Montana actually even thought of it like that? I mean, when you guys were going in there and trying to change have them look at changing the law, was that part of their reasoning at all, or?
Well, we feel we did have a pretty good victory. What we've already talked about with them reducing it, and we're going to try to get it lower in the coming years. So I think that a smart politician should really listen to this aspect of the controversy, what the economic impact is. And certainly for the states in the West, tourism is a major, major part of the economy. And you want to be doing everything you can to encouraging tourists to come to places like your state. And so we feel we really have a good position on that to put forward to people. And it's also a way that we can be very positive about this, saying here are the positive aspects of having wolves in our local community.
Wow, that's interesting. Which I'll be going to that conference in a couple of weeks, so I'm excited to attend,
Okay,
and I look forward to seeing you there.
I'll see
Um,
I'll see you there.
I'll learn more about this.
We can,
So
okay, we can watch wolves together.
yeah, well, I'm planning on it. Yeah.